Alrighty, and it's about 2 minutes before 8:30. I'm just going to go ahead and get everything set up here, and as people start rolling in, we'll get started. All right, it is 8:30. We're going to just give it one more minute here, and then I will get started. Alrighty, there's a few people that have joined, so let's go ahead and get rolling here. Alrighty. So hello, everyone, and welcome. Since we have some new faces with the start of this Monday's class that just started, I'd like to reintroduce myself. On Photocracy, I'm Uziel. You can call me Chuck, so hello, everyone. So before we get started into the questions, I wanted to mention a few things. So for those of you that have been joining the Hangouts for a while, I've been normally doing them on Wednesdays. I'll soon be moving them to a different night, probably Monday or Tuesday. I'm actually starting my final university semester, and unfortunately, my classes are Wednesday and Thursday evenings. I say unfortunately because two of the classes are from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., and 10 p.m. is like my bedtime, so I have to also drive home from school too. So that should be interesting. Secondly, I want to mention that I normally try to have a very quick response time to questions as they're posted. This weekend, though, I am traveling for my wedding anniversary. It's our 11th anniversary, and so we'll be traveling to Boston for a long weekend. Some of that's going to be driving around in the woods and things like that and hiking, so I may be out of internet and cell reception. So those of you that are new, if there's any delay over the weekend, that's not really normal. So I apologize in advance, but I will do my best to be able to answer your questions. All right. We have a lot of questions that have already been submitted, so I'm just going to go ahead and get right to them. So the first question comes from Karen, and it's in regard to meal timing. She asks if it makes any difference as to what time your last meal is before you go to bed. That's a great question because there's seemingly a lot of conflicting information out there as to what's optimal, what's best. So it can be a little bit confusing to wade through that. So as far as fat loss goes, meal timing in general doesn't really matter. You can eat as early as you like or as late as you like, or you can eat as many meals as you like or as few meals as you like. You can skip breakfast, you can just eat lunch and dinner. Some people only eat one meal a day. Not a fan of that, but I mean, whatever works for you. What does make a difference, though, is how you respond to that timing or frequency of meals. Your body does prefer some normalcy. So if you change your eating patterns at the start of this class or during this class, there is an adaptation period, and your body's going to resist that change initially. But after you do it for a couple days, a week, your body will settle into that being normal. However, if you do that and you go through the adaptation period, you do want to pay close attention to how the timing of meals and how the frequency of meals, smaller meals spread out across the day versus larger meals, like, breakfast, lunch, dinner with no snacks or anything. You have to pay attention to how that makes you feel energy-wise, how that affects your sleep quality, and how that affects your digestion. So if you're used to eating smaller, more frequent meals, and then you switch it up and you do intermittent fasting and you eat, a regular size lunch and a gigantic dinner, that may play havoc with your digestive system, may give you stomach cramps. It may make you sleep poorly. So your digestive system is going to be probably the slowest part of you to adapt. So you may want to kind of play around with things and see what makes you feel the best. But there is not one single best way for everyone as far as meal timing or meal frequency. So a frequent theme with nutrition is find the best way that works for you, that you can consistently stick to, that makes you feel good. And it may take going through some ways that make you feel bad to get to that way that makes you feel good, but it's really just experimenting and see what works for you. Personally, I eat breakfast now, but I tend to have breakfast be my smallest meal, and then lunch is a little bit more, and then I have a big dinner, and then I have a snack right before bed, and that actually helps me sleep. Eating carbs at dinner and a large portion of them from fruit right before bed helps me sleep very well, and I don't have any digestion problems because I'm used to that at this point. When I switched to that, there was a significant hit on how well I could digest all of that food at one time, and it takes some getting used to for sure. So the second question comes from Legata Blanca, and it's regarding expectations for weightlifting with the new calorie goals that you have. So Legata Blanca mentioned that she's having to rest more between sets or reps, and she has some wooziness. So it's the unfortunate reality that when you start a calorie deficit, your weightlifting may be impacted negatively. So as you mentioned, your rest periods will increase, and you may just run out of gas earlier. Specifically, like full body exercises such as like squats or deadlifts, you're going to get hit harder on those exercises than you ever have before as far as the energy. And I think I talked to you through the workout you tracked, where overhead press is going to nosedive probably first and then bench soon thereafter. And that's normal. One thing that you want to make sure you don't do is lower the weight on the bar or lower the intensity when you encounter these. So if you need to rest longer, if you need to do less volume, that's fine. Just don't lower the weight on the bar. That's an indicator of strength loss, and that's what we want to avoid. In the case of when we're eating at a calorie deficit, any resistance exercise is there to preserve muscle. So when you have a limited amount of energy to do your workout, that's a good case to tightening up your routine. So if you normally have the energy to go into the gym and you do your primary exercise and you do a bunch of accessory work and some circuits and then some cardio afterwards, this is a good case of when you can remove some accessory work, really dial it in on the primary movement. So if it's like the squat is the one big exercise that day, you want to focus on that. You may need to lower the reps. You may need to increase the rest periods and even reduce the number of sets. But no matter what, please do not lower the weight on the bar or approach it with less intensity. There are going to be days where you're just punching the clock, where you're coming in and you're doing the workout and it's going to be crappy, and that's fine. And those days may increase in frequency as you are going through the process of fat loss. They may increase in frequency. So when you're losing fat, the primary goal of that weightlifting is to retain muscle and to retain strength. So if you've gotten used to that and you kind of feel like you're still nosediving on all of your workouts, one after the other, and it's not just a bad workout or a bad couple of workouts, let me know, and we can ease up on your calorie restriction a little bit, or combine that with something like a deload, which is basically take whatever you're working with now, have the weights. And I know I said don't do that, but if it's specifically a deload and it's planned, it's different. Where you would go and you'd have the weights, and you would do it as the reps as quickly as possible. And that's just to kind of continue to do the movement, get some work done, but just kind of take a break and let you recover. And as part of that, you could do a deload and then kind of bump the calories up for a week, see how you feel, and then go back at it to normal. Just as an example, I've been fighting a cold, and I got a flu shot, which makes me sick every time I get one. So that's what I do when I have a cold, is I scale the weights back. I do a deload. I work on some speed work, just being faster on the reps, and I try to eat closer to maintenance for at least a week and see if that helps me at all. All right. So our third question comes from Danny. Danny asked about the importance of stretching when it comes to working out, and if that helps with post-workout soreness, as well as my own pre or post-workout stretching. And real quick, you may see the term DOMS thrown about on the internet on Photocracy. That's just delayed onset muscle soreness. It's just your muscles feel sore after you're working out. So this is kind of one area where I've waffled a little bit back and forth. But right now, I pay attention to how I'm feeling that day, and I pay for it when I don't. And I say that because this is something that just happened to me. Like I said, 2 weeks ago, I was sick, and the one day it was a Monday. It was really bad, and I was like slumped in my chair, and I didn't move from my chair the whole day. I have like a lingering injury in my right hip, and the whole day from slumping in my chair and not sitting up straight, it felt really tight that whole day. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to go home. I'm going to do my squat workout, whatever. I'll just power through it and be done with the day. And I was an idiot, and I knew that I should have stretched or rolled it out a little bit to warm it up, and I didn't. I went right into my warm-ups with just the bar, and I hit like the third rep, and it just felt like somebody hit me right above my butt with a baseball bat, and I like pulled something in my back with just the bar on my back, and I was done. I couldn't even bend over for a week. I was like limping. It was horrible, all because I didn't stretch out when my body was clearly telling me you need to stretch out. So to specifically answer your question, pay close attention to your body. If things do feel tight, stretch them out beforehand. If you go through your warm-ups and they're still tight, stretch them out a little bit more. But if you feel fine and you think that your warm-up sets are enough to give you that stretch reflex and prime you to do the exercise, you don't have to. If you're continuously sore from the workout and not tight, you should be able to differentiate a little bit between what that is. Some stretching and foam rolling can help you alleviate that, but I wouldn't immediately go to that and do that after every workout either. So the short answer is that it's very situational. Danny specifically mentioned your quads were tight on Monday, and today they're still tight. So that sounds like a good opportunity to stretch them out, maybe hit them with a foam roller. Personally, I was never able to use the foam roller effectively enough to hit my problem areas, and I felt like a weirdo rolling around on the ground. So I got something called the Original Massage Stick on Amazon, and it just looks, it's a stick with a handle on each end, and there are rollers between the handles, and you can really hit some of the tight problem areas. And that really worked for my right hip. That had always limited me as to how tight that hip was, and I could never get it untight. I believe I mentioned I sit at a desk for 14 hours a day, so tight hips are a huge problem for me, and I have to make sure I get them adequately stretched and warmed up. I really only walk from my desk to get more coffee and back to the desk, and then probably more coffee. So that's really important for me, at least. But the stretching aspect can be different than the muscle soreness aspect. What I find that helps is that if your muscles are continuously sore and the stretching and foam rolling is helping, but you could feel like you could use a little bit more, just getting some brief activity in to get blood moving to those areas to help the healing process. I would personally do something like hop on a stationary bike, or if you are lucky enough to have a bike that you can just go ride somewhere in the neighborhood, go that route, or even just a short walk where you want to like up the pace a little bit. You don't want to be doing anything that's intense or too long, or trying to get your heart rate up. It's really just to get the blood into the places you're sore to help the healing process. And that's like a case where I'll put a show on Netflix or something and just kind of pedal for like 15 minutes and not really like worry about getting in a good workout. It's really just to move my legs and get the blood going there. So, all right. So the next question comes from Anne Marie. I'm sorry, your Photocracy handle does not have any vowels in it, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. You just have to forgive me. So Anne Marie seems to be getting the majority of her protein from dairy and is wondering if there's any reason for caution or concern. In general, I don't think there's any reason for concern. For a while, I was getting like all of my protein from dairy sources, and that was what was recommended to me by my coach. And at that point, I was like, I could easily be a vegetarian. I could just eat cottage cheese all day. But with that said, it may be helpful if you add tracking calcium to your MyFitnessPal. I had to look this up because I added it to mine just to see before I wanted to answer this, and it was confusing. MyFitnessPal tracks calcium as a percentage of what your daily value is, and they don't scale that based on gender or age or your calorie intake. It's really based on how close you are to being at 1,000 milligrams or a gram. So if you add calcium as a tracker, it's going to be in a percentage, and all your foods that have a calcium value are going to be a percentage of that 1,000 milligrams. From what I understand, there's like an upper limit of you don't really want to be over 1.5 milligrams, and that limit is applied to the population in general. So different people have different calcium needs. So it's said that the range is 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams. However, there could be situations where you need more. Be aware that your magnesium intake impacts calorie absorption. And once you kind of start to get into how all the different vitamins and minerals interact, it's like a rabbit hole that you could just constantly say, okay, well, this impacts this, so what do I do about this? Really, if you're not having any problems, you don't want to go down that rabbit hole and have an endless tracking list of different micronutrients you're tracking on MyFitnessPal. It's really not worth your time. But if it is something that concerns you, you probably do want to ask your doctor about what intake you should be for your specific situation. But if you turn on the MyFitnessPal tracking for calcium, you'll at least have a general idea, and you can say, is this okay? Given that I'm in a calorie deficit and losing weight, is this okay? You go from there. If your doctor feels that's too much, there's a couple things we can do, and this applies to everyone. You can look at, if you're getting a lot of calcium from your protein supplement, from protein powder, different protein powders are going to have different calcium levels. So we can look at different calcium, different protein powders that have lower calcium, and maybe specific foods to kind of sub in that are lower in calcium. It's weird, but like the different brands of cottage cheese will have different calciums per serving, things like that, and we can look at that too. Just if you end up talking to your doctor and you'd like some assistance in figuring out how to lower your calcium, I don't think that'll be the case, but just in the event that happens, please let me know, and we'll go from there. All right. So Sem had a few questions, so I'm going to get through his questions, and they're good ones. So Sem's first question is in regard to fat loss, as to what percentage do I think comes from eating right, the nutrition, and what percentage of fat loss comes from exercise alone. The common knowledge is that it's 80% nutrition, 20% exercise. And I used to think that for a long time, and I really believed it. For me, this is my 6th year of having, started this program and lost weight and kept it off. So for me personally, the number I feel like is more 95% nutrition and 5% exercise. And I say that because regardless of what exercise I'm doing, be it lifting weights, stationary bike, hiking, walking, whatever, all of that just serves to make me hungrier. And I could try to power through not eating more from what I exercised with willpower and just dealing with that. I'd rather not be hungry if at all possible. So I would rather much more focus on the nutrition aspect. And that's why this class is kind of set up the way it is. It's much easier to control one thing than try to control the balance of them. So my philosophy is really focus on your nutrition. That's the primary aspect, and your exercise should be aiding that. But it's not like there really doesn't need to be a balance between them. The sole focus is the nutrition, and exercise is a bonus for health, both mentally and physically. And it's not a primary tool for fat loss, in my opinion. There's one thing I wanted to comment on, and this applies to me. So that's kind of, and I've spoke with other people that it applies to also, that their ability or desire to adhere to their nutrition is directly tied to their exercise. And what I mean by that is they feel that if, due to circumstances beyond their control, like I said, me included, if you can't exercise, you start to slide a little bit on the nutrition. So when I say 95% nutrition and 5% exercise, I'm not taking that into account. So they are linked for many people, me included, that when I adhere to my exercise, I feel more incentivized to adhere to the nutrition, and vice versa. So it does work both ways for many people. So just be aware of that. And like I mentioned, I think I've said it this well enough now, but I think I've also replied to some people in the class Autocracy that I want to get away from the idea that exercise is to burn calories, and instead exercise is something that you do for enjoyment, that you do for mental and physical health. So I believe that answers that one. And Sem's next question is regarding using creatine during weight loss. So for anyone that's listening that is not aware of what creatine is, a very brief description is that it's a molecule that's found in muscle tissue. It's already in your body, but it's also found in your diet through eggs, meat, and fish. Creatine has brain and heart protective properties. And if you are looking at weightlifting, increasing creatine intake can increase your power output and help you get additional reps in a set, things like that. It also does help retain muscle when losing weight. And fortunately for all of us, it is one of the most studied supplements in existence. There have been more studies related to creatine when it comes to sports nutrition than any other substance in existence. So that might sound like I'm endorsing creatine and saying everyone go buy it and take it, but it really depends. There may be some negatives, one of which is it causes water weight gain and bloating for some people, so much so that it's uncomfortable. So if you try it and that's not something you want to deal with, then you wouldn't want to deal with that. Some people have reported hair loss while taking it. As you may notice, that's not really a concern of mine. It's not because I've taken creatine before. It's just, I'm a bald guy. That's fine with me. So if creatine is not going to do anything to me in that regard, and I'm not saying that to scare you off. It's just some people have reported that. And, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record. So the answer is usually it depends on you. Different people react to things differently. But it's certainly a supplement worth looking into if you think it would help you retain muscle mass while dieting. It can make you more alert, things like that. I have taken it off and on during my own weight loss. I'm not currently taking it right now, but in answering Sam's question, the first thing I do is I basically formulate how I would like to reply to it, and then I kind of make sure that I'm fact checking against everything, and it's made me kind of reconsider that. I'll probably start taking some again just to augment my lifting as I'm also dieting too. And I mentioned there can be water retention, so if you start taking creatine, you may see the scale jump up severely, even 10 pounds. You may feel bloated, things like that. All right, and Sem's last question is regarding cheat meals to celebrate short-term goals and cheat meals and days in general. Thank you for asking this one, because this is something that's very personal to me. In that, I mean that I used to have cheat meals to celebrate short-term goals in the past, and I found that that perpetuates the reward behavior that kind of got me to be so fat in the first place, to be over 400 pounds in the first place, was that I had a mentality that food was a reward, and I had to break that link. Because that was such an ingrained behavior, was rewarding that myself. I had trouble controlling myself. Is pretty much every culture I can think of, even things like birthdays and holidays. I mean, if you work in an office, you could pretty much have cake once a week if you wanted to, because it's always someone's birthday, or there's always some event going on where there's free food. I know in my office, I've often joked that if I wanted to live on cake, cookies, and pretzels alone, I could get my calorie intake for an entire week and never have to buy groceries just on the free food available in my office. I'd probably be hungry a lot, but I could technically do it. So in retrospect, when I've celebrated with cheat meals, they've usually turned into a binge, in that I felt awful afterwards, and it set me back a little bit. Maybe not on the scale, but maybe it just kind of set me back a little bit mentally from breaking that dependence on food as a reward. And you have to have food that you enjoy or you over enjoy to feel rewarded for something. And I wanted to get away from that mentality. As far as having a scheduled cheat meal or day in general, for many years, I would say the first 4 years of my fat loss, I used to do this once a week, where it was just like, you know what, it's Sunday, family dinner day, ice cream day, whatever, I'll do this once a week. I was able to do that, and I still lost weight. But my calorie goals during the week were probably much lower than what I would put myself through now, what I'd recommend for anyone else. I was creating such a large calorie deficit the 6 days leading up to Sunday that as long as I didn't eat 3,000 calories over what my maintenance would be, I would still lose weight that week. But like I said, at that point, I was 400 pounds. So in some aspects, that wasn't an issue. But about halfway through, I guess around 300 pounds for me, that stopped working. So I had to continuously reduce my calories to keep things going, to deal with what I would be eating on Sundays, which led me to be hungrier during the week, which made Sunday worse. And I was able to thankfully, I was able to step back and recognize that, you know, if you really sacrifice so much on the week that you are hinging your happiness on one day where you just pig out, that the more you pig out on a day, the more you feel like restricting to undo the damage. And that starts to become like a binge cycle. And I wanted to get away from that entirely. So to answer your question, I'm not a fan of scheduled cheat meals and days in general. And one of my favorite nutrition authors, Lyle McDonald, actually avoids using that word, and he calls them free meals, where you still follow the general guidelines. You can have like the same guidelines for the rest of, you know, your nutrition. You can, you know, start your meal with lean meats, lean proteins, and then fill your plate with vegetables, and then a carb source, things like that. But you don't have to worry about tracking. You don't have to worry about, did I go over my calories, as long as you're kind of adhering to those principles. But just in the act of calling it a free meal versus a cheat meal can trigger different perceptions as to how you perceive it. Meaning, if it's a free meal, it's a normal meal. If it's a cheat meal, it's a contest with yourself almost in some aspects. For some people, I know for me it was, where it was like I had to find the worst bad thing to eat when I had a cheat meal. It was like I had to one up the previous attempt. So that's kind of what I want to get away from. If you feel like you need to have a free meal, go for it. And I prefer you use that terminology, but, you know, still stick to the basics. Part of this program is that you should fit in the things you want all the time, so you're not desiring them for some future date when your diet is over. And I don't look at it that way. You should be able to enjoy the things you like every day. Maybe you won't be able to have them in the amounts you used to, but that's just part of the process. And as you lose weight, you won't always need to be on a calorie deficit. Though there will be a point where you can fit more things in and ease up a little bit. And that, if as long as you can work those things in normally, you won't feel the need to overcompensate on days when you're not tracking, which can at some point undo your progress throughout the week, and you can get caught in that cycle. And that's one of the things that I had to overcome, and it's not easy. So my approach now is, for everyone's goals, your calorie deficits are not aggressive. Your protein goals may be a little bit aggressive to kind of control hunger, but your calorie deficits are not aggressive, so that you can fit more things in, so that you don't need to have an all-out binge day or cheat day at the end of the week, so that you're not caught in that cycle. That's what I'm hoping to avoid for everyone. All right, I actually think that covers all of the questions that were asked through Photocracy. I do have the question and answer app turned on for the Hangout. You should be able to submit questions to me, and they'll pop up in the side. If you just want to go ahead and do that now, any question at all, and I'll just give that a couple minutes. And while I'm waiting for that, I always am interested to hear any feedback you guys have on the Hangout. And I always basically end the Hangouts with saying, I know that as soon as I turn the Hangout off, you're going to remember a question you wanted to ask, and that's fine. You can just go ahead and ask it through Photocracy. Depending on the urgency of the question, I may just answer it on Photocracy, or I could save it to the next Hangout. That's fine. I think for now, the next week's Hangout will be Wednesday, same time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, which is GMT -5. Then the week after that should be the same thing, and then that's the week after that's when I start my classes. So I'll probably look at Monday or Tuesday for that. Let's go ahead and give it another minute here. Actually, I had this came in right as the Hangout started, so I missed it. Danny had one more question, so I'll go ahead and answer this. It looks like the question is about aspartame, the artificial sweetener, and that it's in every diet drink available. I was told it can be very bad for you if you drink it every day. I used to drink calorie-free seltzer drinks, but one of the main ingredients is aspartame. It apparently kills the sugar in the drink, but in high volume can kill the sugars in your brain. As far as I'm aware, that all of the studies have shown that it's fine in reasonable amounts. As with most things that are chemicals, the poison is in the dose. So any study that shows that it's bad for rats means they gave the rats an equivalent where you need to eat 15 pounds of aspartame in a day, and then you'll probably die from it if you do that. But if you ate 15 pounds or drank 15 pounds of water in a day, you'd also die from that too. Diet Pop, I drink probably too much of it. It's really how it makes you feel. A lot of people have said anecdotally that there's a study that shows this, but that doesn't mean it's not true. A lot of people have said that Diet Pop kind of hits that sweet reward center and makes them crave sweets. That's one of those things you'll have to kind of see if that is the same for you. The only real reason I could say to not drink Diet Pop is if you're drinking like a ridiculous amount, would be just too much caffeine, keeping you awake. The other thing that could be is that it can have an effect on your teeth's enamel and kind of wear it away. So that's really about it. It's really a case of how does that make you feel? If it makes you feel okay, you don't get intense sweet cravings after drinking it, I'd say go for it in moderation. All right, and a question came into the side, so thank you. It's from Michael, and he's saying, my caloric goal hasn't been an issue, but the protein goal seems to be harder to meet. What's the best way to meet the calorie or the protein goal without blowing my other limits? All right, so there's a couple different ways to approach that, but the primary trick, I say trick as double quotes because it's not really a trick. It's really your meals would need to become protein centric. In your program document at the very bottom, I should probably start putting a table of contents at the top. That would make it a little bit easier to find. But I have some suggested protein sources that are leaner, and then I have like a chart that kind of ranks them the most protein per calorie, bang for your buck. So a couple different strategies. Dana, who's from the first extreme fat loss class, brought this up, and I'm so glad she did because it's something that I did, but it was one of those things I just never thought to mention, was that if you try to get as much protein as possible earlier in the day, number one, you're not as hungry throughout the day, and then it gives you a little bit more freedom for your dinner meal. So to specifically answer your question, you'd want to try to center your meal around the protein, be a lean protein source, and then you kind of have room for other things. That could be switching to higher protein versions of foods you're already eating. Lean chicken breast is a go-to as far as that goes, but you don't need to eat like an old school bodybuilder where you only eat like chicken breast and broccoli. I mean, I'm all for getting all your green vegetables, but they need fat to be released with them, so you can add butter, to release all the vitamins in them and to add the taste. Protein powder, I mentioned it in your document, it's fine. Would caution that you're not getting too many calories from liquids because it's really not going to make you full. But if you're already hitting your calorie goals pretty close and hunger is not yet an issue, it may be as things go a little bit longer that it's perfectly fine to add in supplementary protein. But your calorie goal is the most important one. That is really what's going to control the scale weight up and down over time. The scale is going to fluctuate day to day. You may gain 2 pounds one day, lose 3 pounds the next day, and it's going to bounce all over the place for most people. So as long as you hit your calorie intake, consider that a success. The protein goal is one you're going to strive to meet. You want to be below the calorie goal, but strive for the protein goal. If you don't hit it, don't fret. Just try to slowly adapt to protein-focused meals. I didn't expect anyone that hadn't had a protein-centric diet before to be able to hit their protein goals week one, no problems at all. It's one of those things that's going to be a work in progress. But as long as you're hitting your at or below your calorie intake, you're golden. The protein goal is as you get used to that lower calorie intake, your hunger is going to start to kick in at some point. And that protein should get easier to meet because the protein will fill you up more, and you'll start to be thankful that it's keeping you full, because otherwise you may find it harder to be under that protein goal, or under that calorie goal in that situation. And some go-tos for good protein sources that are cheap, convenient, and don't require much cooking are my go-tos are, if I'm not able to cook and I need a quick meal, I'll go to the grocery store and grab a rotisserie chicken from their deli section. It's, they cook them pretty well, seasoned well. They're pretty tasty. Dannon light and fit Greek yogurt. You can buy it in like a quart. They have a bunch of different flavors, and it's pretty high in protein. And I know I mentioned I prefer you not drink your protein if you can avoid it, but you can mix like protein powder with Greek yogurt and kind of make like a protein pudding. It's pretty tasty. Just things like that. And I'm sure other people can chime in with what they're doing. I eat, my lunches usually consist of chicken and vegetables, and then I have like hard-boiled eggs for breakfast. Those keep me full the whole day. And then with the combination of chicken breast and hard-boiled eggs, my protein goals, I actually usually go over my protein goals significantly. My goal I have a coach myself. My goal from my coach is 170 a day, and I usually overshoot 200, 220 easily. I mean, I've personally eaten days when I've been incredibly hungry, what I'll do is I'll start to pile on the protein just to kind of combat that hunger. As I've eaten upwards of 300 grams of protein in a single day. And it's really just about focusing your meals on those lean protein sources, and then kind of filling it in with all the things you want to eat and enjoy eating too. All right, let me see if there's any more questions coming in. All right, I'll just go ahead and I'll give it another moment here. See if any more come in. All right. I believe I've answered everything. If you'd like me to, if you'd like me to expand on anything we've discussed, just please ask in group, and I'll be more than happy to expand on it. And like I said, I do updates on Sunday mornings, so please make sure you have your weekly update through the update form that's in your program document. Make sure you have that in before Sunday morning. I usually wake up on Sundays about 6 a.m. Eastern time, so that's when the due date is. I usually just get up, drink a lot of coffee, and start going through them all. And talking to everyone on Photocracy, and next week for the hangout. Everyone have a good night, a good week, and talk to you soon. Bye.